everyone, I'm Nicole, and welcome to the first episode of Clockwork Kitchen. So I started Clockwork Kitchen because I'm a self-taught cook and I love to cook, but I see so many people in my life struggle with it. And I think it's because so often when people want to learn how to cook, they're given an easy recipe or a 15-minute recipe, but I still think that there are a lot of things that make the kitchen and cooking really daunting and unapproachable. And so instead of giving you recipes, I want to talk about the basics before those recipes. So things like delving into specific ingredients or talking about different cooking methods or different kitchen equipment, things that'll help you feel more comfortable in the kitchen. So if there's something that you have been struggling with or that you just haven't been able to find answers on, let me know in the comment section down below and I'll try to make a video about it. But for today, we're going to be talking about garlic. Garlic is a main ingredient in a lot of dishes. It brings great flavor, great aroma. It comes from the onion family. So if you think about all the different ways that you can use onion, garlic has just as many uses. You can find them just about anywhere in your grocery store, specialty food store, farmer's market, you name it. There are a lot of different types of garlic. The most common one that you'll see in the grocery store is called soft neck garlic. It's a white bulb with a papery outside and it's sometimes with like a root at the end, and you can break it off into different cloves. Another type that you're more likely to see is called hard neck garlic. It's really similar to soft neck except that it has a thick stem in the middle. Then there are more uncommon types of garlic. So things like black garlic, which is aged and caramelized garlic, or green garlic, which looks a lot like a green onion and has a softer, delicate flavor, or garlic scapes, which are thicker and are that spiral that you've sometimes seen. And green garlic and garlic scapes are much more common at farmers markets, and they're generally in season in the spring. So since I'm filming in December right now, I unfortunately don't have any to show you. But if you're interested in seeing those come spring, when we're a little bit closer and I'm more likely to find them, let me know in the comments down below and I'll try to make a video about it then. But for today, we're going to focus on soft neck garlic, which again is the most likely kind that you're going to find in your grocery store. Garlic is a very forgiving ingredient, so when you're picking it out at the grocery store, you don't have to stress about getting the perfect clove. You just want to make sure that the head is white, that there's no discoloration, that the cloves are firm, that nothing's shriveled or mushy or sprouting, because that just means that the garlic has been left out too long and is way too old. Now, if this happens with your garlic at home after you've had it for a little bit, there are ways that you can fix that, and I'm going to talk about that later in the video. But when you're buying it from the store, you just want to make sure that it's as fresh as possible. Generally, when I buy garlic, I buy only about 2 to 3 heads at a time, just so that I know that it's going to keep well on my counter unless I'm making a dish that calls for a ton of garlic. Also, when you're at the store, you don't need a plastic bag. That papery outside is going to protect the garlic from any germs or dirt that's in the shopping cart or on the conveyor belt, and you don't need it to store it, so forget the plastic bag. Storing garlic is really simple. When you get home, just put it in a bowl or something on your counter so it doesn't roll around. Keep it away from sunlight so that it doesn't sprout, and you're done. How long your garlic lasts can kind of vary. I've read that a whole head unbroken can stay on your counter for about 6 months, but to be honest, I've never kept a whole head around that long to find out. Once you break into it, those unpeeled individual cloves will last about a month again on your counter. And I really recommend not peeling your garlic cloves. I know this goes against what a lot of meal prepping blogs say, but once you peel them, the longevity of those cloves is really going to decrease. They're only going to last about a week, and you definitely have to keep them in your fridge. So unless you really have something planned for all those cloves, I just recommend leaving them unpeeled. Plus, it's so easy to peel them. So forget gingerly slicing the skin off of a garlic clove or using some fancy gadget. Here's the easiest way that I know how to peel a garlic clove. So place the garlic clove on your cutting board and then put your knife flat on the top and then smash it down with the heel of your hand. You can change up the force depending on how you want the clove to end up. If you want a completely whole garlic clove, then just press down lightly. If you want it a little bit more pulverized to give you a head start on mincing, then bring it down with as much force as you want, and that can be a really great stress reliever at the end of the day. And now it's time to cut. So you'll notice that a garlic clove has 2 ends. There's a pointy end and there's a root end. So whenever you're slicing, you want to try to hold it from the root end and start cutting at the pointy end. To slice garlic, again, hold it at the root end and just cut it into thin strips. When you want to mince it, you start off by slicing, and then you want to kind of run your knife through it in a rocking motion. If this sounds kind of complicated and you're just like, wait, what? Don't worry, I'm going to be covering knife skills in a later video. I also have another solution for that. Just use a grater. You can either use a box grater or a hand grater. Again, start with the pointy end and run it over the grater, and you're going to end up with something pretty close to a mince. You can also use a zester, which is going to give you something closer to garlic pulp. Now, if you have a garlic press, then by all means, feel free to use it, but I don't have one, and I honestly don't think one is needed. Between using a knife or just using the grater, those tools are gonna just have so many more uses than a garlic press will, and so it's just not needed if you don't already have one. So we've all made the mistake of leaving our garlic a little bit too long and not realizing that it's gone bad until we need it right now, but sometimes it might be salvageable. If the outside is discolored or it just looks a little brown or maybe feels a little soft or shriveled, just peel it and then inspect the clove itself. If it's not discolored on the inside, if it doesn't feel like the clove is completely disintegrated, then it's probably fine to use, and feel free to slice or mince it however you need it. Maybe don't use it raw in this case though. Just be aware that because it's older, it's gonna have a little bit less potency to it, so you might wanna use a little bit more garlic than the recipe calls for. As I mentioned before, sometimes your garlic clove can also sprout. You might see a little green shoot poking out from the clove, and that really just means that your garlic clove is trying to grow a whole new garlic plant. So when that happens, just again, peel the clove, cut it in half, and pick out that little green stem because it's gonna taste a little bitter, so you don't want that in there. And from there, feel free to slice and mince your garlic and use it however you'd like. In this case, the garlic is actually gonna be a little bit more potent because all this stuff was happening to try to grow new plants. So you just wanna use maybe a little bit less than you normally would or than your recipe calls for. So those are times when the garlic is okay to use, but if the garlic is moldy or if it really is just squishy or if it's black or discolored on the inside, then unfortunately the garlic just has gone bad and you can't use it. But just because you see it on one clove doesn't mean the whole head has to be thrown away. So definitely inspect each individual clove and you might be able to salvage some here and there. All right, so now that we know how to chop our garlic and prep it, let's get cooking. There are tons of ways to use garlic, and so I'm just gonna cover the basics for today, and there are 5 main ways that you can use garlic: raw, whole, sliced, minced, and roasted. Raw garlic is best to use in sauces like pesto or chimichurri or salsa. If you're blending that sauce, just throw a whole clove or 2 into the blender and whiz it right up and you're good to go. If your blender is maybe not quite as powerful and just can't handle that, you can also give it a rough chop just to get it started. Another great way to use raw garlic is to cut it in half and rub it on some toast. This is gonna give it a really wonderful pungenty, garlicky flavor. And from there you can add butter or tomatoes for bruschetta or some avocado for some avocado toast. Whole garlic is a great way to add garlicky flavor to something without actually having to put a whole garlic in there. So it's a little bit more delicate. So start off with some oil in a pan over a medium-low heat, and then add a couple of whole peeled garlic cloves to it, and just let it lightly simmer until those cloves turn golden brown, and then take them out. If the cloves go really brown or even black, that means you've burnt the garlic and your oil is gonna taste bitter. You can then turn the heat up to medium-high and throw in veggies or meat or anything else you are planning to cook. Sliced and minced garlic can be used pretty interchangeably when you're cooking with garlic. It's all about how big you want those garlic pieces to be. And they're best added maybe 2 to 3 minutes before you're done cooking your dish. Now, you will see some recipes that say add the garlic earlier, and that works sometimes, but it's all about the question, how hot is your pan? If you're cooking up some kale on medium-high heat, that pan is gonna be searingly hot. And if you throw garlic onto that pan, it's gonna burn almost immediately. And again, you're gonna end up with that bitter flavor, which is definitely not what we want. But if you have oil in a pan over medium-low heat, you can add minced garlic to that. It'll slowly kind of brown up and infuse it before you add white wine or some clams and make a linguine or something along those lines. The goal here really is to protect the garlic, either with oil or some kind of liquid like wine or broth or other ingredients. And just keep in mind that the longer that your garlic has direct contact with a really hot surface, the more likely it is going to burn. Minced garlic also works really great in marinades. Just throw a tablespoon or two into the marinade or the sauce and slather it onto your chicken, like for example in this mustard chicken, roast it up and you have a meal. Speaking of roasting, the last way to cook garlic is by roasting it. So when you roast garlic, it brings out that natural sweetness in garlic. So if you're not really into that super pungent flavor, this method is probably for you. It's best to do it with a whole garlic head, but if you only have a couple of cloves and you really want to roast them up, it is doable. Start off by setting your oven to 400 or 425 degrees Fahrenheit. If you already have the oven going for some other meal that you're prepping, this is a great time to also roast up some garlic. Slice off the top of the head to expose those cloves and drizzle some olive oil and salt on top. Wrap it up in foil so that there's a little point at the end of it, and then throw it in the oven for about 40 to 45 minutes until when you check it, the cloves are tender when you poke them with a paring knife. If you're using individual cloves, keep the whole peels on and wrap it up in the same method with the foil and the olive oil and the salt, but they're gonna cook a lot quicker, so I would check them maybe 15 to 20 minutes in. To get the cloves out, let them cool, and then turn it upside down and squeeze out the cloves. These are great to use in dressings or sauces or on avocado toast. The possibilities are really endless. Lastly, I want to talk about some alternatives to fresh garlic that can be extremely helpful. So the first one is garlic powder, which is essentially garlic that has been dehydrated and then ground up. It usually has a softer flavor than fresh garlic, and the older that your garlic powder is, the less flavor it's actually going to have, so keep that in mind. Garlic powder isn't really meant to be used to replace fresh garlic, but it can sometimes be better to use than fresh garlic in certain circumstances, like for example when you're roasting potatoes. If you throw freshly minced garlic in with those potatoes, that has the possibility of burning the garlic. So instead, if you use garlic powder and toss it up with some salt and olive oil and pepper and throw that in the oven, you're more likely to end up with a wonderfully garlicky potato. Garlic powder also works great as a spice rub or added to a fried egg, or of course sprinkled on pizza. Another alternative is pre-minced garlic. Pre-minced garlic is essentially garlic that has already been chopped up and is stored in water and citric acid as a way to preserve it. So because of those preservatives, you can usually find it in the pantry aisle of your grocery store instead of in the refrigerated section, and then you just need to refrigerate it after opening it. I feel like I'm going to get a little bit of pushback for suggesting using pre-minced garlic because it's definitely not as good as fresh garlic, but I started using it a couple months ago and it's honestly just been so useful to have around. So I wouldn't use it when garlic is your primary ingredient, like that clam linguine we talked about or the kale and garlic. If garlic is something that you're really going to use in your dish as a main flavor, then definitely spring for the fresh stuff. But if garlic is more a background flavor that's there to support other flavors like in stir fries or in marinades, then it can honestly be so helpful to just have some pre-minced garlic around instead of having to get out a fresh clove and your cutting board and your knife or your grater or what have you, and just be able to easily add a tablespoon or two to whatever it is that you're cooking. Alright, obviously a video on garlic could last all day, but these are what I consider to be the basics. I really hope you learned something today. If you did, be sure to hit the like button down below to support my channel, and be sure to hit the subscribe button and the little bell icon to be notified the next time I post a video. I have a ton of videos planned for you guys, but again, if there's something that you have been struggling with that you'd love to see a video on, just let me know in the comments down below and I'll try to make a video on it. Alright, well that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching Clockwork Kitchen, and I'll see you next time.